Coming to you from the greatest city in the world, this is the #1 showbiz podcast. It's Talk for Two. Here's your host, Matt Bailey.
Hey, thank you so much, Mr. Gary Owen. I love you, man. And you know who I also love? I love our season sponsors, Axtel Expressions and the Tangent Bound Network. Send Steve Axtel of Axtel Expressions and Mark Bogner of the Tangent Bound Network, send them some love through their respective websites. Let them know how much you enjoy Talk for Two and love their support for this show. I think there's a lot of you out there who appreciate what they do for the show as much as I do. The Tangent Bound Network has some awesome podcasts I know you'll love. Plus, Steve Axtel is carrying our sit stand. Head over and check it out. I hope everyone enjoyed their break after a fantastic full week of podcasts late last month to celebrate reaching 100 episodes. All of those shows are featured on our website homepage banner. Just click on Week of 100 and you'll hear some of the best conversation we've ever had. But it's back to our regular schedule today with the incredible Oz Pearlman. Oz is one of the most popular corporate mentalists working today. And, hot off his recent appearance as a finalist on America's Got Talent, life for this insanely busy performer is about to get crazier. Pearlman joins us to talk about passion, drive, and hustling his show when he first came to New York. Now he's booked months in advance for shows at Fortune 500 companies. And that was all before his rave appearance on the NBC summer hit. Here now to talk about his love for his time on America's Got Talent, our interview with Oz Pearlman. Oz Pearlman, just off an incredible run on America's Got Talent. How are you today, sir? Welcome to Talk for Two.
Hey, Matt, thanks for having me. I'm doing wonderful. Just running around like crazy. Just got in from a flight and getting ready for another flight in 12 hours. So,
wow.
Living on airplanes and hotels.
That's
So
crazy.
a couple of shows in the middle.
That's, yeah. You make your living as a professional traveler, and the mentalism is just a hobby. You're right?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's
That
great.
is pretty much true. The shows are the icing on the cake. The travel is just par for the course.
Well, talk about icing on the cake. How about, having Heidi Klum blindfold you? How was that?
That is the icing, the cake. It's all the sprinkles. It's all of the above. So, yeah, I can't complain. Pretty much could have died and gone to heaven right there. Life is good. Life is good. What can I say?
Well, you were excellent on that show, but I would be remiss if we did not begin at the beginning. How'd you get started in mentalism?
So mentalism is kind of a subset of magic. I got into magic as a teenager. So kind of the start of it was initially I saw a magician on a cruise ship. I was brought up on stage, and I was blown away. I'd never seen a magician like that close up. You may have seen stuff on TV, David Copperfield, but nothing where it happened right there to me in my hands. Kind of a very, very visceral reaction. And I was thoroughly freaked out. I got home. I went to the library. I went to Borders. I started stalking anybody I knew who knew anything about magic and started consuming all the media I could get my hands on. All the times you would find me with cards, with coins, practicing endlessly.
That's awesome.
And that was it. That was kind of how I got started with magic. And mentalism has been slightly more recent. It's been more of in the last 10 years where I've really started studying more of psychology patterns, how you can read people more so than doing trickery with your hands.
Yeah.
Now, I still do both, but what I'm known for more and more is the mentalism now.
Yeah, you're very good at it. You're freakishly good at it. You convince them that you have powers, but you don't ever say it. You just want to know, is he really reading my mind? And it's when you can convince them without, having to give them the premise that you're psychic, you're doing a good job.
Well, that's the whole act. The act is meant to be, you provide a sense of wonder, entertainment, you have fun with it. And it makes people say, hey, what is this? And so you don't get a lot of that nowadays where you don't really know how to explain something. And that's the inherent mystery and the joy involved in the show, which is that it can't be set up, especially when you watch one of my live shows. The one difficult part about AGT is you have to suspend disbelief because I'm only able to perform for the judges. So mind you, that's not my own choice. I just need, a lot of people can say to me, why don't you read the audience's mind? And I go, I would love to read the audience's mind if we weren't on live TV and if I didn't only have 3.5 minutes. So you just don't have the time to pull someone up out of the audience when it's a live versus when you actually see my live show and I get dozens and dozens of people out of the audience at random. Like we throw frisbees, we hit beach balls, people all the way in the back that there's no way I could know. And I tell them absolutely impossible deep secrets that they're willing to share, mind you. It's nothing of the sort where you feel embarrassed, but they are blown away.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the inherent nature of the show, which is, how is he doing this? And also, I'm having a fun time watching it because I'm not just there to fool you. I want you to really enjoy the show.
Well, was that something tough for you? Not performing on the show as we think of it as television, but performing in Radio City. Was it tough to be about? It looked like between 6 and 10 feet, really, until you even hit anybody in that crowd. That stage was so far back with how they did that catwalk. Was that tough, or were you able to work around it by just performing to the 4 judges?
Well, you have to tailor your material accordingly. So I would say America's Got Talent it's kind of first and foremost a popularity contest. And that's really the case. Like once voting is involved, people need to like you. People need to want you to want to win. Nobody wants to give the $1 million in the show to somebody they don't like. So I think that it's a real telling of all the finalists that were there. Everyone was very talented, but beyond that, I feel like everyone is very likable.
Oh yes.
And I don't say that I don't want to say that in a negative way, but you really need to play the game of social media, outreach, and everything combined. It's a multi-pronged strategic approach, and also choosing your material where you don't want to kind of spend your hand too early. You don't want to go to the semis and pull a 0A where they were so good early on. They were so incredible that everyone's like, they're going to win it, but then they set the bar too high. Yeah. So you kind of need to keep an ace up the sleeve where later on you hope to end on your highest note. And, that's the only thing I can say about the show is I felt like I kept bringing it every time and doing it in different ways. And I like the way I ended. Especially given, I think some of the acts had a real tough time in the finale. A lot of people kind of crumbled under the pressure, and I thought I put my best foot forward. So I was very happy with that.
You really did. You really did. And I watched everything back on YouTube. I love that they put the stuff on YouTube. And I just watched it from your audition all the way up. Or did I maybe start at the quarterfinals? All the way up. Just watched everything back. And you really built. You built on everything that you did. And it was just awesome to see. But I want to go back. You left Wall Street for mentalism.
Yeah. Yes, I did.
I don't judge at all.
The craziest thing in the world.
I don't judge you at all, but I can't speak for my audience. Why?
It's funny because most of so many of my events now are for Wall Street firms. In fact, yesterday I was in Park City, Utah, at a very nice resort.
Yes.
And performing for titans of industry, people that are absolutely, and tech innovators and all these people. And, it's funny when they say to me, they're like, oh, you got out of the rat race. Good. You love it. And then other people that are on the other side of the spectrum, they go, you're nuts. So, it was a kind of a mixture of going after your passion, making somewhat of an educated play. It was not, I didn't just take a leap of faith where I wasn't doing anything and I said, I'm quitting my job and I'm just going to go for it. I was trying to kind of build the foundation. So as soon as I got to New York, all I knew how to do was hustle. When I say hustle, that means I would go to restaurants and I would perform. And I would go to event planners and catering halls and go to places where people that book parties and could potentially give me employment would be. And I would just say, hey, let me meet you. Let me show you some cool stuff. And, here's a business card. And I would just literally get out there and put myself in front of as many people as possible on a regular basis. At one point, I had 4 restaurants a week, like Italian restaurants, steakhouses, all different restaurants where corporate individuals are there, people throwing very ritzy private parties are there. And I would work and I would hustle. A lot of these places, they didn't even pay me. I went there for tips and I just did everything I could to get my name known in and around New York, to become the go-to guy in a city of 8 million. And kind of steadily but surely, kind of like pushing a snowball down a hill, I started getting bookings. I started getting shows here and there. And when I ended up quitting Wall Street, I was doing not a ton of shows, nothing compared to now, but I was doing, pretty much most weekends of the year. I'd be doing at least 1 party or maybe 2, and starting to get to the point where you said, hey, I might be able to make ends meet doing this. I might not, but what's the worst case scenario? Back then I thought I'll just try to get another job. I've saved up some cash. I'm not going to go hungry. but I'm definitely going to be eating ramen for a while, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, take a chance, go for it, because a lot of the time people are very constrained. When you've got security and safety versus taking a leap of faith, you get like kind of bogged down by the fact that you got to make that steady paycheck and you can't really go for it fully. And once I quit my job, it forced me to jump fully in the water. Like at that point, you have to make it happen because you have no one to blame but yourself if you don't go do it. And it really forced me to start performing more, getting better, improving my show, and also improving my marketing and the business aspect of showbiz.
That's really important to hear, and I'm really glad that you talk about it from the hustler's perspective and not the Wall Street executive perspective, because the assumption here, the assumption on my part, and maybe some of the assumption on your fans, I can't speak for them, is, well, he became a corporate magician because he had the corporate in with Wall Street, and that kind of just pushed him into doing it. It's really good to hear that it was the complete opposite way of doing it.
Absolutely not. In fact, I would go so far as to say that for a very long time, I didn't have barely any corporate events when I quit because I was too young. I was too junior. I quit my job when I was, I was just about turning 23 years old. So I'd worked there for just over 2 years out of college. I graduated college when I was 20. And I had no corporate. I mean, I wouldn't have hired me if I was a corporate event planner. I was this shrimpy little geek who, you know, if you look at every year of my stage kind of development, I've seen myself improve. And if you aren't improving, if you look at yourself 2 years ago and you flatline, something's wrong.
Yeah.
You need to always be willing to listen to other people. You need to check your ego at the door. There's people that I meet that are up and comers, and I get great advice out of them. They give me kind of like their hunger, their passion. And I really think if you ever think that you're too good to learn or you're too experienced to learn from others, then you are on the decline. So yeah, I'm very open to mentoring people, and I've had mentors in the past, people that I look up to them. I see that they have what I want to have, and I make it my business to get them to talk to me, to ingratiate myself to them, whether that's flattery, whether that's let me take you out to lunch, let me pick your brain, let me buy you a gift. I mean, all of those things really do work into getting information, because information tends to be power. In this business specifically, I've never seen a magic bullet, like one way where one person sees you and suddenly you're going to be Britney Spears. I don't think that exists. You have to make your luck through a lot of hard work and effort. And that's what I think all the people that you see that are successful have done. They are absolutely will work you to the bone. They work so hard to be as successful as they are. It doesn't happen to you by pure luck ever.
Yeah, and I think that's the toughest thing for any performer to wrap their head around, is that there's never one set way. I have a friend who says you got to run your own race. Do not compare yourself to the other guy, because that is death.
It's absolute death. It just brings you down. And there's people I compare myself to that, it would bring me down considerably. And then there's people that would look at me and they go, oh my God, so it's everything is relative.
Yeah, it's so true. Now, but then it begs the question, there's somebody like me who's a performer, but also as a host and wanting to give something to the listeners. How do you get started in corporate entertaining? How did you get started? What can we learn from how you finally got into that sort of holy grail of performance for all these Fortune 500 companies?
I mean, there's no set path. Some people do proactive marketing and they send mailers or they reach out. I've never done anything that you would describe as sending a mailer or doing an email blast to some list that I purchased. I've never done that. Now, that is not to state that doesn't have its benefits and that you're playing a numbers game. Everything I've done through and through from beginning to end is either word of mouth, referrals, or first-person interaction. Somebody sees me at an event, sees me somewhere, gets my card, and they decide I need to hire this guy for X, Y, and Z event. Now, the jumping from X to the Y to the Z, where X is private parties, which is social, it's called the social world, to jumping to corporate is a very difficult transition. Because so many people that might hire you for, let's say, a 50th birthday party, my kid's bar mitzvah, first communion, it is very hard for them to connect those simple dots of like, hey, that worked so good at this party with these people that, hey, you would be great at my Christmas party at work. For some reason, that is like the Grand Canyon chasm that so few people can connect those dots unless you make it happen for them, unless you explain to them, hey, I also work at corporate functions.
Yes.
And to some degree, people they'll only see you in one way. So if you performed at a kid's party, it's very hard to then picture you performing at my corporate event for the executives. So some things can play against you. Mm-hmm. A lot of it comes down to also demeanor, attire, how you present yourself, like a brand. The same way that people go to a store and pay $6 for a box of Honey Nut Cheerios, and right underneath there, the exact same product that's a generic, they will pay half the price for it, even though it tastes the same, it looks the same, it's all the branding. It's the millions of dollars that are put into it. So it's what you're projecting on your website. Like having pictures of you with lots of celebrities, having great testimonials, getting media exposure, whether that's TV, newspapers, things like that. All of that builds your brand and allows you to command higher fees. And I mean, there's no simple way to get that stuff. You kind of either fake it till you make it and you try to market what you do have, but most people can do a lot more than they're currently doing in terms of marketing. Every time you do a show, that show should lead to more shows. So whether that means get a testimonial from the person, a video testimonial, a written testimonial, anything like that, videotape the show. So you start having footage of yourself. It's so cheap now. Everyone has on their laptop, there's software to edit. Even if you can't afford to have somebody fancy edit your stuff, you can start putting out a video. In this day and age, it's absolutely there's no excuses for not having a website that's got a few photos of you that are professional, that either you took or someone else takes on their iPhone, something decent, and a video of you performing. Because those two things are what it takes to market yourself. And I know a lot of performers that don't have a good video. Mm-hmm. They have no video on their site, and you go, how is this possible in 2015? It's crazy.
Yes, little shameless plug. We do some video consulting here through the website. But whoever you used, did an excellent video for you. I watched that again today, and you have that professional voiceover, all those wonderful TV clips, and it's not grainy. One thing I can't stand with certain performer videos is they'll have good quality footage, and then they'll have bad quality footage, but they think they can hide the bad quality footage because they have the good quality footage. When no, you got to, across the board, show your quality.
Right.
You know, and I think another thing that you do, and if I'm giving away the farm...
It's funny because you say that video, because I want to get rid of that video now, so I'm already working on, because I need to incorporate the AGT clips, and now I'm going to do a whole new video. So it's funny how it's like, in with the old, out with the new. It's always funny how that works, because I love that video 2 years ago, and now to me it seems dated. So it's all, I mean, you've got to invest in your business, and that video is the number one investment that I can make. More than anything else on my entire site is that video is what sells me.
Yeah, well, we'll talk after the interview. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
But but another thing I noticed you do, and it really surprised me because just because of the level that you're at, and I was wondering if you could speak to this. You book everything yourself.
That's changing soon. Yeah. That's definitely changing soon.
Yeah, I mean I don't mean that in any kind of negative way at all. But it's very interesting how important and integral to getting to this point that you're at was not really working with any agents as the primary way to get a hold of you if somebody visits your website.
See, I don't know. I can only speak to what I've done in the past and like the business I've built, and I can't say if it's hindered me or helped. You know, there's just no way to go back in time to know. Mm-hmm. Being on AGT has given me some big opportunities in terms of agencies that you would consider very large in scope and well-known have reached out, and they like what they saw and they want to represent me. So I'm kind of going through that process right now. But it is a major kind of relinquishing of control, because I'm so used to booking my own things for so long that to go into somebody else doing it, it really does take a big amount of faith on my part to give it away to someone else and make sure that they're going to represent me properly.
Yeah, with being a hustler, like you said, there's a certain amount of being a control freak that has to come with that, and to give that away is kind of it's kind of scary. Kind of scary. I can see that.
It's kind of scary, and I've acted myself as an agent for so long because I book so many other performers as well. Like, aside from me booking myself, I book a lot of other performers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just because people call me all the time for events, and I'm booked so far in advance that they call me and I'm not available. So I say, hey, I've got somebody else who's terrific, and why don't I recommend them instead? And so I do that, and that's just become a huge part of my business over time now, where there's so much additional bookings that I book a lot of other people out throughout the country. So to now give that up by having an agent, I think that is what's necessary to propel me to the next level, because at a certain point, you can't have it all. You can't do this and this and this. You have to relinquish some control and go after the bigger market, which in this type of case, national exposure. Like catapult from doing AGT to continuing, like keeping that going, if you will.
Did you have an agent contact you for AGT?
For AGT?
For AGT, to do the show.
No. So the way, I mean, do you want the backstory on AGT?
Oh, yes. Every time we get an AGT performer on here, I love the backstory. It's so fascinating.
Yeah. So I tried out, I did a few things on NBC in the past. I did NBC's Holiday Party 2 years. This is back when Jeff Zucker was there.
Yeah.
So I had some, let's call it connections at NBC. The connections, that's in one day, out the other. You never know. The leadership changes, everything changes. And that doesn't mean you're going to get on TV because you did their holiday party at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I got invited to do the AGT. Someone in there knew me and said, come on in, do an audition. And I think this was about 4 or 5 years ago. It might have even been 6 years ago, like earlier seasons before Howard Stern. Yeah. I went in, I had a terrible audition. I wouldn't call it through a fault of my own. It was entirely their fault. It was just, the layout of the audition was not conducive to an interactive performance. Like what I mean by that is I walked into a room with nobody in there, just a cameraman, and they go, all right, do your thing. And I go, I'm a mind reader. Like, I got to read someone's mind. Like it doesn't work if I don't have a participant. And so somebody was brought in, but he wasn't focused, and it was just really lackluster through no fault of my own. And I knew it wasn't going to play well. If that makes sense.
Oh, that totally makes sense. Yeah.
So you can't really control that type of thing, but I did what I could, and I did it and didn't get in. So no hard feelings, figured it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
I started watching the show in season 7, becoming like a big fan of the show, watched it when Howard Stern came on, had a bunch of friends that kept telling me every year you need to do it, and every year something went wrong where I couldn't audition. Like one year it was right in the Super Bowl, and I had 3 corporate events that weekend, and I'm not turning down corporate events to just go to a large casting audition. These are paying the bills. I had to wait for a date. Then one year I actually drove up to the audition and everything. It was 15 degrees out. The line was wrapped around the block. I go, there's no way I'm standing outside for 2-3 hours in this type of frigid weather. There was a bit of ego. I'm like, I don't need this that bad.
Yeah.
And I didn't do it. And frankly, all those times, I think I did the right thing. I ended up going, the time was right for me. Last year I went in, I did the open casting call. So when I say open casting call, that means just like anybody else who would sign up, I just signed up, went into a room with about 8,000 other people and auditioned. And I got in. So that's the round before you actually meet the judges.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So you actually go through, with the producers, and the next step is they tell you, hey, come to this day on this date, and you're doing something at New Jersey. I was at New Jersey Performing Arts Center, and that's what you see as the audition round.
Yes.
I assume that's an open secret, but there's an audition that takes place before. The people that are in that, the judges aren't the first people seeing you for the first time.
Oh, yeah, that's common knowledge. They did that with every Simon Cowell thing. They would...
Correct. For pre-screening you. And AGT doesn't do as many of the American Idol things where they kind of bring people in as just a joke to make fun of you and get X. They do some, but you kind of know who they're grooming. Like if they like you, then you can kind of tell early on that they do want you to succeed. The show is unequivocally, I want to say this for anybody who wants to audition, one of the best things you will ever do. Like they want you to succeed. I think that if you have a healthy dose of self-confidence and open to constructive criticism, then you can do it. But they are not going to tiptoe around. Like a lot of people are very sacred about their material. They are going to shoot you straight with what works on TV because they know better than you do. They have the number one show on television. So when they say, we're going to change this and this and this, and we're going to shorten this and this, you listen. And that's what I think I learned early on is listen to the producers because they, in all honesty, for the most part, have your best interest at heart. They're going to try to give you the best performance on TV because it benefits you and them.
Yeah, and what I noticed with, and I can see that, and what I noticed, I think from maybe Howard's first season, if not definitely his second season, they kind of moved away. You talked about hitting it right at the right time. They moved away from focusing on those acts that could go either way, that could get necks or being brought on to be made a joke out of, to professional working acts and giving them a chance to showcase what they can do, albeit in the talent show competition setting. But, I know so many of the names that were up there this year, whereas in years past, it really was just kind of luck of the draw, not as many working acts that I was aware of. So I love that they've shifted that focus to the people who know what they're doing anyway.
Right. I mean, the controversial decision this year was importing talent. I think that, was somewhat across the board was controversial, which is the fact that so many of the people that are involved in the show are not, forget about being like America's Got Talent. They're not, there's no connection to America, period. They don't live here. They don't perform here. And there was controversy, people from Japan, Korea, England, Scotland. That's not to say it didn't make for great TV. I just know there's a lot of controversy online about that.
I think they're in the business first and foremost of creating great television, no matter where they can find it throughout the world. And they also do that in production by, like you were saying, supporting the acts, giving them the advice, and the acts that succeed, I think, I agree with you, are the acts that listen.
Yep. Totally agree.
Yes. So let's switch gears here again. Let's get back to talking about mentalism. Now, I want to address a stereotype that I may have made up in my mind, but I think if I did, it's through kind of noticing it just a little bit. We were talking earlier about the corporate work and the private social work. Is it easier for mentalists to get that kind of work than magicians? Because I notice, like with my college, I noticed that they'll bring in a mentalist instead of a stand-up magician. Or I have a mentalist friend, and he's working much more than the professional stand-up comedian that I know, and he is working more since he switched over to kind of being focusing on mentalism. So is it easier to get booked when your act kind of packs small in that way?
I don't know if I don't know. I mean, you have to really look at the numbers. I bet you if you looked at it, there's a lot less mentalists than there are magicians. So it's really important. Like, if you look at the overall, it's kind of the equivalent of a general physician that you go in for blood work, physicals, versus someone who's a specialist, who's a gastroenterologist, who's a plastic surgeon. There's much fewer people that can present mentalism really entertainingly and not be boring, because there's so much less to see. When you watch a magician, there's props, there's cool stuff, there's fire, there's this. When you're watching a mentalism, it's usually some guy writing stuff down over and over, revealing info, and if you don't do it right and you don't have a diverse act, then by the second or third trick, you kind of glaze over and you get bored because you know what to expect. There's no anticipation. There's no excitement. It's like, oh, you got that right too. Oh, yeah, you got that right. You need to have a well-crafted show. I don't know if it's easier to get booked as a mentalist, because I think some mentalists that you don't see, they're not getting a lot of work that are bad.
Yeah.
They probably are struggling just as much as magicians that are bad. I think kind of the cream rises to the top. I will say that mentalism is more in right now because of the fact that people want something they can't explain. And when you watch mentalism and a really well-presented mentalist, you give people that little bit, kind of like the taste of, here's how I'm doing this. And people feel like they're in on it. They go, oh, he's using this technique and that technique. And then you kind of stop them. So you get them up to this level, and then they kind of get it, and then you blow them away by doing something even more. You go, wow, I don't even know how he did that. And like in AGT, if you watched a lot of my routines, the first climax was not that impressive. It was like, that was pretty cool, and then something would happen again. You'd be like, whoa, and then something would happen at the end that you completely weren't expecting, and you're like, I have no idea how that just happened.
Yep.
So you want to build. Like, you build from, there's 4 X's and a picture of me to I know which chairs they're in to I knew everything, kind of like I knew which people they would think of.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm answering your question.
No, you are.
I think
you
that
are.
A mentalism show right now is a little more in, so there's definitely a supply and demand curve. But if you flood the market, if all these people saw me as a mentalist, or saw Matt Franco doing more mentalism, even though he's kind of more magic, it's undoubtedly going to get people excited about the art, which I'm all about, and representing it well. But if you're not doing it properly, you're probably not going to get booked.
No.
Just the same way that a magician who is not really refined with their technique or is not really good with dealing with people, they might not get booked. I don't know. I think you'd really have to look at stats to know if people are booking more mentalists than they are magicians.
Yeah. Well, you raise a good point about being passionate about mentalism, and I don't think we talked about that switch over here. If you maybe you mentioned it earlier, like half hour ago. But what switched it over for you? What appealed to you about that specialty of performance? You talk about it as an offshoot of magic and that you got started in magic, but what turned you on to mentalism?
So from a logistic perspective, once you get to a certain stage where you're doing bigger shows, suddenly you're getting booked for shows that people are calling me like, I have 200 people, 250 people. If you're doing magic, you're much more limited as to what routines you can perform based on what items you have to bring with you. Props. Literally, do I have to pack an extra suitcase with just stuff so that people can see it visually? Because picking magic that plays to a very big audience and packs small is very, very challenging. Versus mentalism, you can actually do, that's what a lot of people will end up appealing to them when they travel a lot, is that mentalism, for the most part, is very small, like in scope. Like, I don't need big props. My show is me. I can get to an event with nothing. I could go to Staples and spend $50 and have everything I need to do an hour-long show for 500 people. That's a worst-case scenario, mind you, but I could do it. So there's that element of mentalism where logistically I started doing more mentalism as I got to bigger shows because it padded my act well.
That makes sense.
But as I started kind of enjoying the art, I just loved the challenge of it. So in mentalism, you're deconstructing the human mind. You're thinking, how will someone think that I did this? Or what is the effect I'm trying to create? Like, what am I trying to make people think that I did? Like, well, what's the net routine in your mind and the experience people will take away and talk about? With magic, so much of the practicing, it's the same type of thing, but you train your hands to do it. You train your pack or for misdirection. With mentalism, there's very little of the sleight of hand involved. So you can't really, that's a crutch. It's kind of like you rely on that as a crutch versus mentalism. You get out there and you're much more exposed because it's you and the audience. And every show is different. You can't just dial it in the way you can with a lot of card tricks. I know exactly how this card trick works. You're going to pick the card, you're going to put it back. I'm going to do this and this move. I'm going to produce the card, voila. With mentalism, it's never that simple because it changes depending on the people you use. So I just kind of like the rush and the exhilaration of taking more chances. Not everything goes right. So if you were to watch my show, I don't get everything right, like beginning to end, and that's what sells the experience. Because when you see me up there and I don't get something right, you go, wow, that makes everything else look so much more real. Like a great metaphor, did you watch The Ladder, the Uzier, the guy with the ladder on the AGT season 10?
Yes.
When he fell, everyone realized it jolted you into being like, oh my God, I have a step ladder at home. Are you kidding me? I wouldn't balance on the top rung of a 3-step ladder that's 4 feet off the ground. This guy's 20 feet up on a ladder with nobody holding it. And when he fell, it hit you. Oh my God, this is real. There's a real element of danger. So with mine, it's not really the element of danger. It's more like, wow, if I just told you to think of any word in a book and I got it wrong, it makes you realize it's not a trick. That you really are somehow figuring out what they're thinking because you didn't get it wrong on purpose. I mean, you can generally tell when someone's getting something wrong on purpose, whether it's actually just didn't go right. Yeah. And I think that's some of the appeal of mentalism. It's much more challenging.
Yeah, I could see that, and that's why I love it. I don't do a lot of mentalism in my shows, but because just for a variety of reasons, I don't want to. I want to do a variety of stuff, but I love it so much, and you do it so expertly. So we're going to wrap this up. My last question that I love to ask my guests when we're going to focus on mentalism: what do you want to see from the people that are interested in mentalism, that want to learn it and get very good at that specific subset of magic? What advice do you have for them?
Be creative. So really, that's what I would say is don't become a clone of people that you're watching their videos of. So when you watch, with mentalism, almost everyone's reinventing old tricks. Literally, there's so few things nowadays that are new, that are not just an offshoot of something that someone created 50, 60, 80 years ago. So everybody gives it their own spin. So if you watch someone in a video or you read a book, books are better because you can't really mimic or parrot someone. But when you watch a video and you see someone else doing it, try to infuse a bit of yourself into the routine. Think, what could make this more impressive? Or how can I do this differently? Or what presentation do I have that makes sense, that's organic? Too many people just see a routine, they see it, and they do it identical to what they just saw, to the letter, like to the inflections in their voice at certain parts.
Yeah.
And I think it's doing themselves such a disservice, because then you become a carbon copy of someone else, and you aren't someone else. You're likely someone completely different with your own unique talents, your own unique quirks, and developing your own character is enormous. I'm still doing it. I'm still trying to figure out who am I as a performer. And when I do these shows, I try to improve. Like I get critiques. I'll have other performers watch me. I'll try to video the show or tape it and try to work on the stuff. And that's always, it's the worst. Watching yourself on TV, when you watch AGT, I'm like, oh, all I'm thinking is how this could have gone better or this could have gone better. And I admire some of the parts I liked. And I'm like, that went well. But you have to try to improve. You have to learn from what you're doing. So yeah, anyone who's going to start learning mentalism, don't be scared to try it, but also try to be original. Even if that means changing presentations a little bit or figuring out how it works for you, do that. Don't just do the exact same thing you see in a video.
All right, that is wonderful advice, and we're really talking to somebody with a true, unique character and an expressiveness all his own, Mr. Oz Pearlman. Thank you so much for being with us today.
I love it. An expressiveness all my own. I don't know if that's good or bad.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
My thanks again to Oz. It's really awesome to see what you've done and what you're on the cusp of doing. It's very, very cool. Now, that's it for us this week. I want you all to head over to talk4, spellout2.com for even more Talk for Two. Check out some of the awesome stuff we have for you in the Talk Shop. We are now shipping our new DVD, Ventriloquism, for comedy clubs. If you want to work comedy clubs as an event, you better get this. Plus, we are taking orders for our very first official podcast t-shirt. Thanks once again to our season sponsors, the Tangent Bound Network. They are our brand new server, and they are the reason that 100+ episodes is now online and in iTunes. I didn't have this written down, but it feels so good to say it. Over 100 episodes. We worked so hard to get there. And again, thank you to our season entertainment sponsor, Axtel Expressions. We talked about both of them at the top, and I hope you will go check out their sites. You can find all you need to know about Talk for Two, once again, by going to our website, talk4two.com. Reach out by emailing talkfor2cast@gmail.com and find our group or like us on Facebook by searching for Talk for Two. Actually, just like us. I'm going to get rid of that group. Nobody uses it. I just post in it. Tweet us and about us using @ and hashtag Talk42. Okay, maybe I won't get rid of the group, but I'm not going to add any more people to it. I'm directing everybody to our page. We have much more fun over there. Signing off for Talk for Two, I'm Matt Bailey, reminding everyone out there listening today to keep talking for two.
You can hear more show business interviews with the stars at talkfor2.com, where you'll also find one-of-a-kind products to improve your own show. That's talk4two.com.